In this drawing, we're going to look at just the cubic, rectangular cubic form, or I'll call it the brick form, whichever way you want to say it. And I'm going to show you as we kind of attach it into a more diagrammatic viewpoint. And I'm going to show you where the extreme points of view are, which are going to be more in the middle here. So this is kind of like a one-point perspective setup, but I'm going to take some liberties to adjust the angle. So I don't want you to hang on to it too rigidly for this diagram, but we are kind of locking it in to a system, and I want to show you different multiple viewpoints that you're going to get that are subtle with foreshortening, where the extreme parts are, and then as we get further away they become less extreme and they show more length, and then they become two-point kind of forms there. Okay, so I think that's important. All right, so to expedite things a little bit, what I did was I just measured halfway down my paper, drew a horizontal line across. I'm working with Sharpie, and then I drew a vertical line across. And the vertical line is really just to keep my forms and objects a little bit straighter and upright and a little bit tighter in terms of my diagram, so you can do that too as well. Okay, so to get started, I think it's important to remember we're going to be dealing with that brick form. Okay, so down in over here, remember that at its longest point, the kind of the ratios of what we're drawing, this brick will be kind of like this. That's as long its point. So remember, there's no foreshortening there, okay? There's none here. And the extreme parts of that, the front face of that, if you would, the width, okay, will look something like that. And of course, we have the most extreme parts of that in through here in terms of our brick. So that is our height and weight ratio, and then we're going to show you I'm going to show you a lot of different points of view and where the extreme points are, and then where they're not so extreme. But I did want to leave that down in the bottom there, so we can kind of relate back to that. All right, so when looking at perspective and more importantly foreshortening, the extreme parts happen more in one point. And kind of the way to start this, I'll show you, is the front face and the back face of the brick would be right in through here. So I'm going to start to sketch it out. I'm going to use Sharpie. If you're not comfortable with using a Sharpie, use something else. You're fine. Don't worry about it. Use a pencil, use graphite, use color pencil. It just shows up really nice on camera. I think it's really nice. Okay, so when we cannot see top or bottom, left or right, we have the most extreme foreshortening. And it's a little bit blunt. Artists don't generally, at least I don't, and I think most artists, when you look at their work that deal with the figure or abstractly, and you're trying to show three-dimensional form, don't like this view. Why? Because it's flat. It looks like a rectangular cube. It doesn't, or excuse me, a box. It doesn't look like it has any depth or dimension. All right, so when we start to move up or down, we can start to show a little depth in dimension. So this line designates our eye line, okay, or our horizon line, or the reality of this drawing. And I'm going to put horizon on this side so you'll see it. So everything above we're looking up to, everything below we're looking down upon. So I think that's important to note and to understand as we go further. All right, in this foreshortening lesson. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out another form and show you that as we draw this front face, now that we're a little bit below it, we're going to see a little bit of the top part of this form. Very, very slight part of that form. See that? And so as I shave, I'll kind of just give some cross contouring to this form that comes down. And if you want to take your ruler and tighten this up, you can. I'll do that some when it's relevant. It might take a long time if I keep doing it all over, but I want to get through fairly quickly. All right, so we start to see, now you can see the foreshortening. If that's the length of this brick down and through here, that's extremely foreshortened. All right, so we'll keep going further in our composition. I'll try to put as many as I can possibly put. And what you're going to notice as we go forward in this is that this view becomes a little bit longer, meaning that the width of the front to the back is starting to get a little bit longer as we go forward. This is extreme. This is the most extreme. And now this is a pretty shortened view of that. I could put one in between to show that, right, between there. And this is still pretty foreshortened too as well, right? So we see that the distance between the top and the back of the top is still pretty short, but not quite as short as here. Why? We're looking further down upon the object. So let's put some more. Let's just continue on in our foreshortening lecture here and through there. Okay, so we're working this, and we're going to show a little bit more. Now, I'm not necessarily obeying one point to that point. So if you're thinking that, you know what I'm doing, that's great, but that's not. I'm just approximating. And the reason why is I want to make sure that I can give you quite a bit of viewpoints. Okay. So now as we get further away, we start to get more distance between the top front and the top back, even further through here on our brick there. Okay, and I'll keep on going here. So bring this down, and these are front faces of the brick. They are, now I could tilt them a little bit if I want, but that might show the underneath, and I don't want to right now. I don't want to confuse you too much. So this is going to be even a little bit longer as we get to that brick. And I'm just giving you some shaded lines here just to show you depth, distance, dimension of our object. And again, remember, overlapping. These backs would be here. They would be more overlapped. And I'll put one more down here so you can see it. And give it even a little bit longer depth and dimension as we get further and further closer to looking upon this brick straight down. And so lastly, what I'm going to draw over here to the side right here, if we were looking at this brick straight down, okay, what would it look like? Well, it would look like something like this over here, but now we would be seeing the top of it. And so what we would get to, if we were straight straddling over the top of it, looking down upon it, what would we get? We would get this view. And there's no foreshortening in that. That is a straight, flat view. We don't see any sides, etc., right? So I suppose it could be an extreme of the top. But in this case, we're kind of dealing with that front and back for the most part. So that's the top of our form in through there. And so these were pretty decently straight, not too bad. Try to keep these together. Okay. So the most extreme parts, the most difficult parts start to happen in through here. Now what I want to do is let's go up. Okay. Let's go up, and what we're going to see as we're looking now down on these forms here, right? Here we're going to be looking at above. So we're going to see the bottom of these forms. So I'll draw my first brick here, come up like so. And so we're going to see a very narrow part of the bottom. Here we don't see any top, bottom, left, or right, correct? And so as we come in to our brick form here and over and through here, we're going to see a very narrow form. Now, a lot of students miss that. They miss it because they want to widen out that viewpoint. And if we had a very tight pencil, a technical pencil, we could even get tighter and tighter. You'll still see some underneath until you get to the very bottom. Then you'll lose it. And this fluctuates. This brick fluctuates in between eye level where we can't see top and or bottom. So there's a fluctuation part of that. So now we start to see underneath that a little bit, and as we get further and further above our eye level, the foreshortening becomes less extreme. This is very extreme. So we'll bring this, make this a little bit further, a little bit more open, the width between the front bottom and the back bottom. And you can tone these this way if you want, inward like so. And just give a little bit of cross hatching just to show their depth and dimension. And again, as we start to go further out, what's going to happen? We're going to see more of that bottom. So the foreshortening gets less extreme. And this, so the distance between the front bottom and the back bottom gets a little bit greater. Greater and greater. Right? Or you can tone it this way if you want. Go across the form. These could come down a little bit. There are different ways to cross contour. I'm just using kind of a design aesthetic just to show that. Let's keep on going. I'll go a little bit faster. Bringing up my forms here. And through here. And inward to the end of the brick. And it starts to even signify the length in perspective and in foreshortening. They work together. They don't fight one another. They work together. So what's true of these forms will be true of figurative forms when we start to look into the figure. And I'll give a little hatching here. Try to keep them all a little bit different to keep some variety through there. And then we'll go up a little bit further. Here. So I've got to show even more, a little bit challenged there. Didn't leave myself quite enough room. Just a little bit, and that's fine. Right in through there. So hopefully you're starting to get the idea. Look at the changes that are starting to occur in our foreshortening as we see more and more of the bottom, right, of these forms. Here we see none. Again, it's an eye level. We don't see the top, the bottom, the left, or the right as we start to change and work our way up. And then lastly, I'll go for one more, and then I'll show you what we see like we see down below. Make sure I'm in the camera there. You can see that. Yeah, just barely. I think. Our last box, and we'll come on in. And we're still in decent foreshortening, but we've got longer length because we're looking up higher to the brick or the box through here. Pretty powerful stuff, and you need to be shown it. When you're shown it, you can practice it, and then when you can practice it, you can master it. The magic happens on your own. It doesn't happen with me. I'm just showing you what you can see, and the magic happens when you practice it and you get it, and it becomes your own tool or reality. All right, so we worked our way up, and then what we would end up with if we were straight, the brick was straight over us, is that we would wind up with a viewpoint that would look just like the bottom viewpoint, but now looking at the very, very top. And there's no foreshortening there. Okay, so we would wind up with the same kind of thing. And now we're looking at the bottom of our box or our brick because now we're over it. Or excuse me, it's over us. Make sure I get that right. So we're looking at the bottom. BOT for bottom, right in through there. So what do you notice so far? The most extreme points of view happen in this kind of an area. And that's what really, when we talk about foreshortening, and I think when other instructors, artists talk about foreshortening, what they're really talking about is these extreme positions right in through here. So I'm going to extend this out a little bit so we can see more of that. We can understand a little bit further what's going on. Have a drink here in the composition and with the idea of foreshortening. So I'll start about right in through here and we'll bring this over. And what's going to be interesting is we're going to see now a side too as well. So I'll bring this over to here, correct? We see that? So we're coming into the composition, but we're going to see, disregard that little line. I messed up there. Brought it a little bit further. We're going to be coming in a little bit more here, right? In a little bit more here. We're going to see a little bit of this side. So that makes it even more complex. So we've got foreshortening, and we're pushed off from our central vision. So we're going to see three sides of our form. We're going to see this side, right? And we're going to see this bottom. Both are foreshortened. One more extreme. There's even more of a slight view here than there is on that side as well. Okay, but we do see some more underneath. So let's bring this down even further, and let's take a couple of more viewpoints in this extreme foreshortening here. Okay, and this is going to get even shorter. It's going to be about that short as we're going to come into our viewpoint here. I'm going to show a little bit of this side, of the left side, so that's got to angle in a little bit, and this comes right on down. It's pretty slight view. Look at that. That's pretty slight. Pretty slight here. This is where students miss it in the beginning, is they make it too wide. Okay? And I think that's where we can start to correct some of this, hopefully, and get this pretty natural look, this view, ingrained into your mind, and then you can really control it. So if we come down even further, what's going to happen? Okay, we're going to miss more here, and we're going to come down here. Okay, and we're going to come in, but we would get a real slight view. Barely the width of my Sharpie pencil here. There, right? And then these stay about the same, although the angles do change somewhat as they come in. They come in a little bit further, and there you go. Look at that. And you continue to open that up, and so we get some more extreme kind of points of view here. And let's put it down. This one, let's put it down on the eye level here, so we won't see top or bottom, right? But we will see the left side like this. We'll see a little bit of foreshortened on that side. Okay. All right. So now we're starting to get some extreme points of view that are multiple points of view. And of course, we could continue out if we wanted. So I'm going to do this side and go down. And then I'm going to do this side to about 3 and this side to about 3 and show you that Goldilocks, or that maybe that circle of hell. Actually, maybe that's a Dante reference. Maybe that's better to show you that extreme circle of hell where it's the most difficult. And then I'm going to draw some things outside to complete our reference point. Okay, so that's coming up. All right, let's go on and do this other side over here. So let's work with these extremes of foreshortening even further. So now we'll push our viewpoint by moving the brick to the left, and we'll see the right side of these forms a little bit, and I'll show you that. So it's going to look like a lot like that, but just on a different side of the object and through here. So we're going to move this front plane of our boxy brick form down, and we're going to see the right side now emerge quite low, right? Because it's moving down to a viewpoint or a vanishing point lower in through there. So let me tighten that up so you can see that a little bit better. And then we'll move this bottom form down, this really strongly foreshortened length to about right there. So these are similar objects, but you notice how they have different views based on our point of view So they're all foreshortened, but now we get slightly dissimilar viewpoints of an object slightly above our eye line or our eye level. So let's go on and do some more here. Put this one down and through here so we can kind of bring this length over, and so we get a length that's a little, this could be a little bit longer for the sake of the help there. And so we bring this bottom down a little bit longer, and so we can bring that angle in, bring this angle down and in, this angle over, right? So now we have a foreshortened, a little bit longer there, foreshortened box in perspective that we start to see here, and we can tighten up this edge through there. Now give a little toning and shadow on this side of it and on this side of it to fill that in quite nicely. And so we'll work with a couple of more now. We'll go even to more extreme. The closer we get to our eye level here. Bring that down. Okay, that flat plane. Okay, as we're coming in, but we get closer to the eye line. The closer we get to the horizon line or eye level, this is going to be even flatter and even more foreshortened. I think students and those who are early to drawing have even more trouble with that. So we can get down to a sliver of viewability, or what's shown, if you will. And we can bring this in and downward like so. There we go. And now we have a whole array of objects. And then we'll put this one in at around eye level, but because it's slightly pulled over to the left here, we're going to see a little bit to the right, but only one plane. And a little bit to the right here, and downwards and over. And so we only start to see that. So we start to see that raised section above and at eye level into this extreme area. So the extremes happen in this region, right in through here. So they get more extreme in through that area. So we'll write extreme here. And so again, what do we mean by extreme? Well, overlapping, tapering, flattening, widening, and more one point happens right within this viewpoint. So keep that in mind as well. Now let's do the bottom, and we can show what it looks like when we're looking down onto a grouping of objects. I think that will be challenging too as well. So let's draw together here, and we'll bring this width and length over of our rectangular brick box here to here. Now we're going to feel this pull and movement back this way, but we're going to cut it off at that very slight view. So that very slimming, tapering view in through here, and then we bring the side back in and back over. And so now look what we get. We get this very slimmed, foreshortened box in space here, and we'll make it a little bit lighter on top. And we'll put a little shadow tone, little hatching lines, make it look like a reflective maybe surface just a little bit, just to give it some variety in through there. So this time I'm going to skip over and we'll do them kind of opposite, so we kind of see different effects at the same time. So now we're going to see, because this object is pushed over what? More to the left of center. We're going to see, and we're looking down on it, what are we going to see? We're going to see the top side here, just a little, just a sliver of it in through here. And I'm approximating my perspective. It's not completely accurate, and I don't necessarily want to be, because I want change these angles to my description, the illustration I'm creating here. And then we'll go back and space this way. We'll see a little bit of the right side. Tone that a little bit, tone that a little bit downward, and then we'll put a little tone on this too as well. So we start to see then that space in through there. So now I think what we can do is continue on. We'll jump over here further. We'll lay in our front plane for our brick box, and then we'll feel it going back in space this way. And because we're a little bit on top of it even further, we'll see a little bit more of that top. It'll be foreshortened, and we'll see just a little bit more of that through here. Shade down a little bit there. And we'll get a little shading and spacing through here. We'll bring the same thing over now. Bring our box through here, and we'll push it this way, but it's a little bit longer. We're more on top of it, like so. And then we're going to see a little bit of this right side because it's within our view, and downward. And there we go. So I'll pull that shading back that direction, and then some downward here. And then we see this little bit of shading on this side. And I think you get the point. So the extremes now happen in through all of this region, right? So we can see this happening. And these are pretty severe 1 point, areas for the most part. Those are, well, they are 1 point perspective. So what I want to show you now is roughly when we still have foreshortening, but as we get further out from this area, what's best illustrated can be more 2-point kinds of forms, and how 2-point forms show a little bit more of the dimension dynamics of the form, and they're less foreshortened. It's when objects come right at us, correct, that we get that extreme foreshortening. And so in this region of the 1 point, for the most part, and you can extend them out, but it's better illustrated by 2 point, we get that kind of extreme foreshortening. So if we started over here on the horizon line, if I started with its true length, it would look again like that long brick that doesn't have really any depth or dimension through that. Okay, so we don't see the top or bottom. But if I put it out a little bit, let's say over here probably, we can start to pull in a 2-point kind of form out through this way. And because we're on top of it, we can see the top of it, but we can see how this starts to flow out in this kind of direction in through here. So I think that's important to see as well as we go through. So these become less foreshortened, even though they're not the true long. That's the longest length that we'll get. These are not necessarily scale. I'm just going to start bringing these over a little bit to illustrate a point for you in how dynamic and how severe foreshortening is when you start to get forms like this over here that don't have as much foreshortening, but they do have, a strong sense of perspective and perspective usage, which is right now just implied. I'm not really going back to distinguishable vanishing points that we can completely lock in. We'll do that when we hit our perspective sections in the future. Promise. I made that promise, and we'll do that for sure. But we're drawing brick forms that are three-dimensional, just like we've been doing over here, but what's missing is that these will probably feel a little bit easier for you to draw because they have length and depth and width a little more elongated out from our view, not so distorted like your foreshortening. So what can we say? We can say that your foreshortening then is very much one point type, overlapping, tapering off of these forms that make it so beguiling, I suppose, and difficult to draw. And that's why I called it kind of taming the beast. And it's made even more difficult when we go to the figure. But we'll start with simple forms always and then work our way out. And so I'll continue to go here and go around, and you can continue to see that as we go further here, that these are 2-point forms. And we're looking further down on the object from our eye level, right? We're looking even further down upon the form because they're a great deal now below. Remember, the extreme viewpoint, when they're really down below, is right in through there. We'll get something that looks like that. But because it's not, here we're still in more perspective, and we do get some foreshortening of the length, the width, and also the height completely. So we'll continue on here to sketch a little bit further. And I like to put a little shading through here. I kind of just abut my edge, put the edge up to the Sharpie so I can shade it quicker. Through here and over. And you can do this down. I kind of just turn my hand and kind of run it down the shaft like that. So we can put a little bit of shade hatching through there. So this direction is moving this way, right? We see that. I'll put one more in between here. We'll go on to a couple higher, because I think you get the point now of what's happening and what's going on. Is that these are not as distinctively severe in foreshortening, but they have a distinctive look to them that is all about being correct in a certain viewpoint. Through here, and then we'll do a little shading on through here. And then we'll put a little cross in through, cross contouring in through there, and that moves in this direction for the most part. And then lastly, setting it back up, maybe I'll make this one a little bit more bigger. It doesn't make any sense. You get the idea. Bigger and a little bit more to scale. And so we get that complete view there that works pretty well. We don't see the top and the bottom, it's on the eye level. Now one thing, if I raised it off a little bit, I could have done it over there, I should have probably, is I'll put the length, make it the same length. But what happens in this kind of view, since it's raised up a little bit, and I don't want to make it, let's say I don't want to make it, I could make it go back to here if I want, but if I make it go inside, we could see a very foreshortened view of the underneath here in this kind of direction. Okay, do you see that? So now we see a very foreshortened view underneath here, like so. Or I could have gone back into here, but I didn't. I chose not to. So let's do a couple out through here, and then we'll get out of the drawing through here. So if I'm looking up at now the object and through here, this could be, I could look at the side view if I wanted. And through here, we could raise this up, and then we could come on down a little bit. So we're looking at the underneath part of our form here and then through. So that could give you this kind of structural look. In through here, tighten this up here, vertical, vertical, more vertical, connect that through. Right now these are not tilted, so I'll keep these verticals nice and tight and vertical together. Here, and through here, right in through there, and then we can shade a little bit quicker. Here and on the side, maybe I'll do it diagonal real quick, like so, and then all the way through here, And you always want to make if you're shading, a little tip on shading is you always want to make one plane darker than the other. You want to have three distinctive planes, a light side, a medium side, and a dark side. No matter what kind of value system. They could all be relatively dark. But whatever it's going to be, you want a 1, 2, 3 step kind of planar direction. Then I'll put one over through here, and I think you'll get the idea. Because I want to do this one more drawing with you. And I want to show you also this in cylinders too as well, which can be pretty challenging too. So we'll come back here, catch this here, through here. This I could go across or I could go down. This would be more 2-point. I could have gone across, that would be 1 point, but 2 points better. Through here. Let me do some more out through here. Okay, and these all have direction, right, going in this way. But they're the same brick, right? The same brick proportion or ratio. But why do they look so different from these? Because they're not as extreme foreshortening. So the point here is to show you that the idea of extreme foreshortening happens, again, when these objects almost feel like they're coming straight at you, and they're probably best expressed through a 1 point perspective kind of feeling. Okay? All right. So there we go. So those are now, and of course we're looking up from our eye level. That's why we see the bottom of these forms in through here. Okay? Okay, now let's do the same drawing. Let's do the same thing in cylinders, and let's have some fun with that. Hopefully fun. See you in a second. So now I want to do the same exercise with cylinders. I think you want to see that too as well. So again, I've taken the liberty to divide my 18 by 24 inch sheet of paper down the middle horizontally to create an eye level and or a horizon line. And I've just given a vertical mark down the center just to help me align my cylinders up for a while. So we'll take on the same kind of exercise that we did with the boxes or the bricks, so you'll see that. So I'll start with a cylinder here in the middle. And again, we're going to make cylinders. I'll put one down here, make sure you can see it. That's going to look like a tube, something from a not very foreshortened, maybe at the top a little bit, lips. Side view, that's going to look about like this. So that's kind of our tube ratio. So everything that we want to do, we want to play off the ratio of this. Now it doesn't mean it will look like that completely, but the ratio of the height to width to length is about that look. Okay, so we'll start with the most extreme foreshortened cylinder. And so it is coming right at us. And so we don't see the top and we don't see the bottom of our cylinder. So what we will see is what? Pretty much a true circle in our understanding of perspective. So we'll see a true circle come through here, and I'll put a little hash mark coming through. So now we don't see the top, we don't see the bottom, we can't see any other angle coming through our composition. So now we're ready to lift it up a little bit, and we'll start working here. Here again at eye level, now looking up to cylinders in perspective. Let's take a look and see what happens when they become more foreshortened. So we'll get overlap. We're already wider, right? So we get that too. So let's lay in our circular form. But now we can say, okay, we see a little bit underneath there. So we get this circular form, and of course it overlaps. So if I show a little bit coming underneath and through here, correct? And then we can tighten this up a little bit by drawing that length now that's truly foreshortened of our cylinder here and here. We'll curve that through here. And what do we find? Now we have a foreshortened cylinder. And so because we are below it, we'll see underneath it. So this would be, if it's coming at us, it would be coming at us but miss us or come closer to our head, maybe our forehead or above us. Here, because we're looking right on it, this would definitely come at us and hit us. Let's do one below. So we'll continue up and down the scale a little bit. I think that will help. Hopefully you can get even a deeper understanding of what we're talking about and looking at. And so we did this with the first video with bricks or boxes, and now we're doing it with cylinders. So let me get my circle straighter here, better. Okay, so there we get our circle set in for our tube. And now since we're looking down on the cylinder, we would see the back emerge this way, above. It would be coming down. It could still hit us. It might hit us in the midsection or below the legs, maybe the knee somewhere. Still be painful perhaps, depending on what it is. Let's make it a soft toy. How about that, so nobody gets hurt? So we'll come around the circle and we'll take on this ellipse in the back, or circle, flat circle in the back. So it's pretty flat because it's coming right at us. So again, it's pretty much a circle. And again, of course, it overlapped here, as we can see through it. I think that's important to show. So now we've got extreme foreshortening, and I'll do some shading here about that too, just a little bit to show that coming in, right, and this going away. And we can see again that we're starting to get a nice sense of depth and dimension, but awfully foreshortened too, meaning that it's pretty extreme, in that range of extremeness right in through here. Let's do another. Let's do a couple. Let's go up again, and what you're going to find out is the further it goes up, as we relate it back to a single vanishing point here, and I'm relating it, I'm not being completely accurate because I want to be able to change my scale. Now if we tilted these slightly, that might alter the look, but we're locking them into roughly the center, so you can see this idea of foreshortening. On the figure, which we'll get to in a later lesson, you can have all kinds of minor changes. That's why you want to see these exercises in these basic solids first, and then so you can react to all the changes that you're going to see on the figure, which can be pretty dramatic. So we've got our two here, right? Okay. Now notice again how much longer we have it here and here, and down to the end of the cylinder, the tube, through here. Right, just kind of sketch it through. You have to be careful with Sharpie, it gets so dark. Did you get the idea? And then I'll do a little Tighten this up a little bit in the back, darken that up, do a little shading. And then we start to see, again, more foreshortening. But what's happening now, the distance between the front bottom and the back bottom is starting to get longer and longer. So we're getting a little bit, just slightly, a little bit closer to our true length in perspective. Now let's take one at the bottom here and let's do another one down here. Let's put it down here. And I just use this this vertical line to show, to help make my cylinders equal on all sides, because we need it, because we don't want to see a left or right, so that helps give me a guide in my sketch. It's just a sketch, so we don't have to be completely perfect, right? Here we'll tighten it up a little bit, and through here. Now we want to feel us going back in space. We want it to be a little bit longer. I'll cut off the back about right here. It might get a little overlap, it might not. We've still got foreshortening. Maybe it's going to be right at the edge, which is okay. I'll make this a little bit darker so you can see it coming through here. And so now we can connect our back end to our front end here, and to here in our sketch. Curve this around, make this cleaner, and through here. Shade that off a little bit. We'll vary the shading a little bit. And we'll let this come around and get the length of it through here somewhat. And now again we have a foreshortened cylinder too as well, and this is actually a little bit longer than that one too. Let's do one more on both ends. Here I'll do another one down here and we'll make it even longer, and you can see that process as we continue to go through. So, you know, taming this monster, this beast, takes time, energy, and effort, just like anything else that's worth doing, right? And I think that hopefully you're starting to understand that the practice of these ideas, these concepts in drawing or concepts in art can be mastered quite relatively quickly, some of these, with just quite a bit of practice. All right, and I think that's what we're after, is understanding and then practice of the craft of it. So I'll put this back in here, so it'll be a little bit longer than the other end. So there's the ellipse, the circle I'm going for, then we'll connect our end to end here, end to end here. Start to tighten this up around. You can keep it loose and sketchy, but accurate. And we'll tighten up this back end here a little bit. I'll throw some tonality on it here and here, give us the length. A little bit of shading right in through there. So now we've got a cylinders of one series of 1, 2, 3, 4, where it disappears. That's the most extreme kind of foreshortening, and then of course it starts to get longer and longer the more that we look down on the image from our eye level here, right? And now we're looking up to the cylinder here. And let's do one up here where we get even a little bit longer view, kind of like this one, but up here. And of course we'll see the bottom. So I'll put this cylinder, hopefully you can see that, yeah, just barely. So see that sketch here, and these are kind of quick circles. Okay, we've got our ellipse, or excuse me, our circle set in for our composition, and I'll put my length a little bit long, maybe right in through here, even smaller. And so there's my back end, right? So this is less foreshortening than here, here, and certainly here, because there's really, no, well, it's an extreme kind of foreshortening. We don't even see the back end. So now let's connect our length here and our length here. Okay, let's kind of tighten up our ending points here and then around a little bit. Make that work better here and here. Shade a little bit, shade a little bit. I just give some variation to my hatching lines in through there. And then of course we have curves coming down, curve coming down and through here. Put a little point where this true center kind of is. I think that helps your composition. And I'll give it some length down and through here. Try not to get my head in the way if I can. It's not so easy sometimes. I got a big head, I guess. And so what do you notice now? You see even less foreshortening here, correct? Right? And you see less foreshortening here too as well. So what happens, what we get is we're going to get cylinders, if they keep going all the way down, if this one completely turns right over, what we're going to see with that is we're going to see something that's laying on the ground. If we're straddling right over it, okay, it's going to look something like this here, all the way to this here. So it's going to have that. There we go. Here to here. And here to here. And so what happens is we're standing right on top of this cylinder looking downward. All right, so now we've got, again, I finished out this shading off camera just for a second. And we now have this cylinder that is flat on the ground and we're looking down on it. Okay, so now we can understand that what's happening in this viewpoint is these are turning down. We're lifting it, pulling the cylinder down further, and it would keep going, and this would come flat. Okay, I could even change the ellipses here, even for this would really start to change even further and become less circular as they get higher up. But just for the sake of brevity, this is what happens at the end. And the same thing happens over here too. We get the same view. So what would happen here? Yeah, if we were looking, straight to the side of it, we could see it a little higher with the bottom of it. But if it was closer to eye level, we'd see here. We'd also see something with little perspective. We could actually do this too. We could have this where it's open. And I should probably show you that as well. Here we have that. Here we have this, and of course we have the open part of the cylinder here, and then the closed part of it at the top as well. So we have that coming into our view, and I'll give a little bit of shading in through here, little core shadow, so you can see that some hatched marks around. And the same thing down here. So if we completely now turn it flat, we would see that, but there could be also a point of view where we could look down on it and see a little bit of the top like we'd see over and through here. But main point of it is to get the extremes of foreshortening, which are right in through here. So let's do that. Let's get a further look. So I'll kind of put a halo, if you will, circular kind of halo where the extremes happen, so we can find that range of it right in through about here. That serves us pretty well. So we can say again that these are where the extremes happen. I'll just put extremes here so we can see that. So the extremes happen in this range of our cylinder drawing. So if we come over, we put another one here, what's going to happen, we're going to have one here, right? Because they kind of all start out the same in one point here, and then we'll draw another one over here. and they go back to this middle vanishing point. So we'll get the feeling of it here, here, curve there, nice curve. We get the overlapping we want with more extreme foreshortening, which is everybody's, again, everybody's kind of nightmare. Well, it is everybody's nightmare, I suppose. Certainly for my students here at the university. Here, and then we'll tighten this up a little bit here so you can see that. So it starts to come. Make sure we get that curve coming through here and then on over. We get that curving coming through. And then we'll continue to go forward here, and of course we get more. So the back view of this here, the full circle ending might be there, and so we can connect these here. Now, one point I want to make is that these are all 1 point, and we can get into some 2-point cylinders that start to do some of this too, but the extremes again happen at 1 point. Right in through here, and then they get further out. And let me show you what happens. So as they get further out, let's say out here, right? So we're moving out here in terms of our direction. Okay. The ellipse out here starts to become more of an oval. You've seen this before, I'm sure, right? We see this oval, and you see that it's a more slimming view because it's going to disappear as it continues to turn, let's say, back this way away from us. So if we go to back this way some with our cylinder here, let's say, and here, let's say, so we can taper it. What happens is this back curve gets a little rounder than this one, and through here. And see, there's some foreshortening, but it's not generally a major problem. It's when we get to those extremes of the foreshortening problem. And through here, this gets a little rounder, where that we come through and we see it through here, right? Through here. And we can connect our ends there. And so what happens is this ellipse, you see how closed, it's starting to get more closed. Let me get this centered a little bit better. It's starting to get closed as it comes around the composition, in our case, in our viewpoint here. It's our ellipse. Okay. And it turns in this direction, and so it will get closed as it comes around. It will look kind of something like that, just placed over and through here. So if we did something like that over here, it could look very much like this. We don't see the back or the front open up. And the further and further and further it gets, it turns towards us, it starts to open up, right, even further. And so we get not quite a true circle like we have with this sketch, but we get something more open than this angle as it turns that way. So we might get something that looks like this here. So it just shows you the power of foreshortening in kind of the extremes that we get over and through here. So this might come back in this direction, get more open and flatter as it gets closer to here, and then I can connect it right to there. Tighten that up a little bit. Here, top in there a little bit, and I could put a little tone on these, a little shadow, just to give them a little bit of shadowing tone. and you see the difference. But they're not crazily foreshortened, right? Not like they are here with the extremes. The extremes here. These are 1 point, and these are slightly 2 point because they're moving this way and they're moving back, implied actually, in through here. Here we have these that are pretty much flat, that are straight across, and that's what gives you the difficulty with foreshortening. So, and you'll see this on the figure all the time. It'll be my job to point it out to you later on when we take on perspective with the figure. So let's continue on with our circle here, kind of our hatch mark to show that ends. It's not a sphere. And let's get our ending point of our cylinder that we have over here. Okay, we end that. Here's our circle overlapping. Draw that lightly through there. Then you can connect these ends here, and then of course here, right through there. Curve that around. Get that on curving through. All right, curve this. These are pretty much just about equal curves because this is 1 point through here. And try to keep it sketchy. If you tighten it up too much, it could take a long time. So keep it with the Sharpies. Quicker lesson that way. Trust me, you're probably gonna be thankful for that. So I could shade this in a little bit so we can see that. Kind of shade this down to the length a little bit just to see it converge on through. And so this is where we get those really tough foreshortening problems. We get a very narrow view of the side. It's just like this one, except we've turned it right to the left or right. Because here we're center, now we move it over to the left, we see the right side. Here we're center, we move it over to the right, we see the left side. This will happen in legs, arms, feet, fingers, hands, you name it. And we'll do one more over here. Okay. And we'll put our ellipse, our circle, through here so it overlaps a little bit. Then we can connect, and then we can connect here, our tube, curve this back in around, right, and through there. There we go. There's our front pointing through here, and we could put a little shading here, maybe on the bottom part, up around a little bit. Maybe here on the side, front. Just to give it a better sense of dynamics. And now we have some views here where we get even more extreme. So let's do a few more up in through here and let's see what that looks like. And so we can get a little bit more of a complete kind of view of what's going on in through here. We'll do a couple down in through here. I'll just set them here. Just kind of gives me a place to put them in. We'll go a little bit faster. You probably get the idea. Do a lot of these. Do a lot. Practice foreshortening. Practice other forms. We want widening, we want overlapping, tapering, and they're mostly 1 point, right? That's our kind of our vocabulary. That's what's happening when you start to get foreshortening. So this feels like it's coming back in this direction, right? So it's going back to the center, and through here we can get this, we can feel this coming through, and then we can start to feel our curve in the back all the way through here, right? Connect. And connect there. Come on down through, and then we can do a little shading. Kind of shade it towards the middle. You get the idea. You can take some real long time and make it really pretty if you want. Put another one here. going back to the center, so we'll get even longer. We'll put it maybe slightly over here so you can see it just a little bit longer than this one, because we could keep on going out here. But I want you to get the idea that the extremes happen in this range in one point. Do here all the way around, right? Then we can tighten this up a little bit so you can see it, communicate it clearly. To here, back in through. All right, let's put some, we've kind of got the idea. Let's put one here, yeah. We'll kind of just let's put it back behind this one. If yours doesn't overlap, that's okay. Just do it completely all the way through. Kind of put it behind this little guy here. Back in our extreme range, so we go through here, and I'll put the ending of the cylinder here, the tube. Here's our overlap. Keep that overlap light if you need to. Then connect it through to your ending points here, and it can end here. Then curve it through nice and smooth around. This will lead to competency in foreshortening and learning how to see it on the model. And that's the the point of all this is to get to the real complex stuff later too, where you really have to think through it, and then it becomes second nature. Even in something as complex as the model, it will be. You can get so good at that that it won't throw you off. And then at that point in time, hey, you've tamed the beast, right? I love saying that. Taming the beast, taming the foreshortening tiger, if you will. I know that sounds silly, but it really kind of is. All right, so let's put some more out here, and I'm just putting these little guidelines to help me locate where my tubes will be. And put one here, and that'll be plenty. So see if I can go a little bit faster, get through this lesson a little bit quicker for you. Right in through here. Pulling down this way, curving through. The closer you get to that center, the closer you get to that true circle in your viewpoint where you don't see a top, bottom, left, or right, you know that you're at the extreme of foreshortening. This is the one, this is the extreme one, right, where it is a complete circle with nothing, you see nothing top, bottom, left, or right, or 360 around it. Artists don't like that so much, and the reason why is because it doesn't show a lot of dimension. There's no depth to it, right? It's flat. I guess you could argue that it's not foreshortening since it doesn't show any dimension, but I like to say it's the extreme part of foreshortening, because we do have it come right at us. We've got to talk about it, and I think that helps. So a little bit longer than this one. We're getting further away. These are no different than the ones down here. They're just different positioning points from our center area. So we've got that. I won't shade those. I'll leave that so we can get through a little quicker here to here. That's for a center point through there. Then we're moving down in this direction here, this direction here. We'll cut this off, taper this a little bit, in through, cut off. It overlaps just a little bit. When it overlaps, then you've got more intense, right, extreme perspective. When it doesn't, it's a little bit longer. It gets a little bit easier, but you're always managing, right? You're managing these widths. Students miss these. When it gets really short, they'll make it longer. When it gets pretty long, they'll get it, or they'll make that even longer. Your tendency will be to elongate when elongation isn't the way to go. It wouldn't be as foreshortened. That happens all the time. in student work. Don't worry about it, make your mistakes. Let your instructors correct it for you. No problem. That's how you learn, through lots of mistakes and through here. Okay, so we come through, then we're moving over. So it's going to get a little longer because we're further out, and I'll end it about right in through here. So there's not as much, there's no overlapping of this circle to inside this circle, none, and through here. So curve that through. So there's much less foreshortening. There's some. We're not seeing it from this flat view or this completely set down view, right? And so we get that too as well. All right, so we've got this extremeness in through here. This is where the extreme happens, right in this area. All the tough work of foreshortening. And you'll see it all the time. And the cylinders in some ways are even more relevant than the boxes. Remember that if you get in trouble, go back to the simplest components of shape and space. So if I put a couple out here really quickly, I'll throw some out here that are more 2-point, that you get more of the elliptical flattening in through here, right? You've got that. Then you get this coming in, and you get a little bit more of a curved back and through here, coming back in. Taper that a little bit further in through there. You get the idea that this is not so foreshortened, right, any further. So I can tighten this up, change this angle just a little bit to here and over and straight through. Okay, so these aren't quite so foreshortened in through here, and so that's why when it's 2-point, it really makes better sense to talk about foreshortening in 1-point, because that's when it's truly happening, when it's truly coming right at you. Okay, good stuff. Practice this a lot. Do cylinders and box forms in many different extreme positions of foreshortening, and you'll grow and you'll learn quicker. Make your mistakes, watch your widths, really gauge the widths in between top and bottom, or the bottom front and the bottom back. That's what we're really talking about. That will help. Really watch those. They're probably a lot more narrow in foreshortening than you think. Okay, so what I want to do next, the next lesson that we do in foreshortening in the future will be still life with tubes and boxes. And I'll set it up in a way where you can really practice foreshortening, where our eye level is about at these 1-point congruences, and you'll really have to start figuring out space from observation. Everything we've been doing so far is kind of theoretical based, practical we're looking at, and now we're ready to start to rumble, if you will, and look at true still life objects. Once we master the still life object, then we'll go on to the figure. Okay, see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.